this idea of that I think a lot of us share, and I think we've shared for a lot of years, over a decade for sure, of this sort of embryonic stage of human beings, if you will, where we're kind of turning back maybe, or turning on at a collective level, this more metaphysical connection, this intuition, this access to a sixth sense, or what, there's so many different ways of sort of quantifying and talking about what this is and what this can be. But I think back, as much as we feel that way, it's like I question, I'm like, for so much of the history that we understand, the sages of the past, the philosophers of the past, and the brilliant thinkers and people, the shamans, all the people who had access, the seers, they were always in the few. The question now is how, when you now have a material world that looks upon these old ideas as nothing more than, woo-woo nonsense, how do you get, the collective, like, are we really going to move to that time? How do you get people to embrace this idea that there is something more when we're so bought into that empirical world, and it's only seemed to be getting stronger and stronger and stronger of a push? What I'm asking is, do you guys sense an evolutionary pressure that is asking people to open up or awaken to something more about themselves?
I do. I do. And, it comes in the stressors upon that view. In other words, what I would say is, let me speculate for the first time in this conversation. If we were to say, this is, an idea that I'm sure many people have considered in the audience, what was the point of this? Let's assume that it was, lab origin. Like, what was the point? Really, to make us all sick, to make a lot of money for Pfizer? Perhaps. But there could be, a more foundational purpose to this. We talk about control. I would say that if we believe in a cabal or an oligarchy of technocrats or whatever, how does such a small number of people control a vast population on our globe? It has to come through, division, and then the incursion of authority in between these groups. So we have large nation states, which are now starting to break down. And then we have, the division of our ideology politically or a religious basis. And I would say that, the next stage of intervening in our humanity is to create fear amongst each other in our own family, or in the grocery store, or waiting for a train. It's like, whoa, stay 6 feet away from me, man. I don't want you that close to me, and you're not wearing a mask, and you're now the enemy. And it is a gradual incursion into our humanity, in terms of, like, it's about separating us and wedging themselves in between us. And it was done masterfully in the last 2 years. I mean, like, look what's going on right now. I mean, there was a time where you would walk into a bank with a mask on, and suddenly, who do you do? Like, are you trying to rob us? And now it's like, oh, you can just, put on a huge mask and say, hey, I'd like to make a withdrawal, please. I mean, what has happened, right? This is all, is it part of the plan? I don't think it's reasonable to unreasonable to put it on the table, as that was the intent. What is the point of a single mushroom with a couple of strands of mycelium if it's not connected to the collective? It doesn't serve its role anymore. It offers nothing, and it will die. And so we need to be holding each other in love, and we need to be communicating with open hearts, especially when we disagree with the other person. And this is where, the First Amendment is so important. Do you understand that we have to defend the people who disagree with us? Like, where has that gone? Have we really just surrendered that right? That was a really difficult individual right to grant to people in a population 240 years ago, and we're just throwing it away as if it means nothing, out of danger. I mean, this is, our founding fathers are rolling in their graves, guys, because like the most important things were like, whatever. Second Amendment, First Amendment, let's just throw them all away now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the breakdown of sort of the value we place in those universal principles is part of the division I think you're talking about, and I think is something that's preventing us from getting to the next stage of our evolution. Because Joe, you talked about if there's an evolutionary pressure that's going on right now. I think there is. I think there's a lot of discomfort, but there's a lot of potential for growth from what's happening. I mean, from an exoteric perspective, COVID-19 revealed a lot of flaws and failures in our overall system, whether it's supply chain, inequality, even our whole relationship to work. All of these things were exposed in COVID-19. But from an esoteric perspective, breakdowns in society like this, global catastrophes, do create that evolutionary pressure to also make us take a metaphysical approach and say, well, really, what's important here? Take an existential approach. And that's why I think you're seeing more and more people have conscious awakenings to where they're actually they're questioning their entire reality, right? And this has happened, I think, for many people over the course of the past 2, 3 decades in particular. But you're seeing a lot of that happening, and a lot of that happens through a shock, right? You're shocked, and you're shocked out of your normal way of living, and that causes you through discomfort to have to question things. And I think that's a healthy process we're going through. But I think if we don't sort of supplement that with what Madhava is saying, with a love for each other and a love for just living, and also a love for seeing people live in abundance, seeing people live in a way where they have the free space to explore all of these ideas without censorship, without being judged, without being exploited by people who want to kind of take their conscious awakening and direct it into an unhealthy place. These are where we all have to take the responsibility to be custodians of our own consciousness. And you two brothers certainly do that. So I salute you for that.
Thanks. Look, no, that's it. That's all. There's a lot more to say here. First of all, thank you, David, because I got lost in that. That is absolutely right. The question was about evolutionary pressure. And if we assume that the people who conjured up this thing, that was their goal, is to break us apart, they took a huge risk, because when you apply that kind of pressure to a natural system, it's either going to succumb to it or it's going to transcend it. And that's where we have to be very careful, because, as we are, producers of content, you have to come at this with love first, because otherwise we've lost. At the end of the game, we've lost. If we make enemies talking about these things, we've lost. We have to make friends doing this. We have, that is the antidote to what's happening.
Yeah, and interestingly, that's been one of the areas of challenge. Is if I'm being fully honest, I've struggled being a content creator and being a part of the alternative community, if you will, for the last couple of years, because I've kind of been noticing that the hate towards the what are often called the normies or the sheep or the people who are vaccinated or whatever people want to say has been so extreme. And I'm like, well, I don't think that way. I feel awkward seeing these comments, seeing this hate, seeing this, so much division. And with our particular work, and I know you guys align this way too, there's always this effort to connect with people on a more meaningful way and understand them and respect them and all these sorts of pieces to the puzzle, and try and produce content in a way that isn't creating that polarization. But it's, even still to this day, I meet up with people at times Thanks so much for watching this clip. You can listen to this full episode via the link in the description below. It's also available anywhere you currently get your podcasts. If you want to support this podcast and watch this full episode on video, consider becoming a member of our Explorer Lounge. As a member, you get access to exclusive video content. You can watch full episodes just like this, ad-free, and you get access to a private social network where you can discuss and learn about many topics with a like-minded community of changemakers. Being an Explorer Lounge member brings you great benefits, plus you're directly supporting our dedicated team here at Collective Evolution and The Pulse.